with you today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 Hult Prize Foundation Digital Speaker Series event. This year's final broadcast of the year is all about the future of food. I'm exceptionally excited to be here with you as the founder and CEO of the Hult Prize, but also as the founder of Falafel Inc. For those of you that don't know, the Hult Prize every single year awards the largest startup award for social impact in the startup universe worldwide. We're excited to welcome a former winner from Aspire Food Group to anchor our panel today, as well as two industry titans, Nate Mook from the World Central Kitchen, as well as Kat Cole, legendary president and chief operating officer of Focus Brands, somebody who's brought to market food in a new and sustainable way. And we're really, really thrilled to have a panel for you. I want to give an extra welcome to all of the Hult Prize Foundation community around the world. This year alone, we'll graduate 300,000 young people from more than 121 countries who are thinking differently and boldly about how they can use business as a force for good and specifically solve some of the world's toughest food challenges we're facing as a community. So I do think this particular digital series session will be an unbelievable opportunity for them to be inspired, motivated, and ultimately get them to the next level to take action. So with that, I'd like to ask my co-panelists for today to go ahead and join. Hopefully we can see them all at once. Tech team, there we go. They're 1, 2, and 3. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Hello.
Off mute. We've got Mohammed, Ashour, Nate Mook, and Kat Cole. Thank you all for joining today. I want to get right to it. We've got an hour. I'd like us to go about 40 minutes max, so we can give a good 20 minutes over to the audience members. And Mo, Ashour, I don't know where you're appearing on my screen. You've got the Hult Prize logo right over your face. So yeah. Scoot over a little bit.
Okay, fair enough.
Other way.
Okay, that's
perfect. That's cool. So folks, here's how today's going to work. Very simply, I want to talk about 3 main topics in food: starting, scaling, and impact. Because I think the majority of our audience today is the Hult Prize Nation, and they're probably in between their 18 years old and 23 years old on average, and they've been challenged this year to think about creative ways to use food as a force for good and disruption, and how to create an enterprise that can impact the lives of 10 million people over the next decade. So we'll start with some intros, and then I'm just going to jump right into questions. Mohammed, Ashour, I'll start with you. 2013 Hult Prize laureate, $1 million in seed capital, created today largest food disruptor, I think, in the world. So just a quick intro on yourself.
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure to be with you guys today. I'm Mohammed Ashour. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Aspire, which is a company I started, as Ahmed mentioned, back in 2013 with my co-founders. And of course, the only thing that inspired us to build this business was, in fact, the Hult Prize, as a bunch of grad students who were perfectly primed for this type of challenge. I was actually in medical school at the time and had just developed an acute awareness of the role of food and public health in people's health and wellness. I think the first day in medical school, the dean stood up in front of the class and said, half of what we're about to teach you is wrong. The problem is we don't know which half it is yet. And then proceeded to show us an infographic that illustrated that although 80% of healthcare dollars go into clinical medicine, clinical medicine only drives about 20% of people's health outcomes. Things like wellness, eating properly and nutritiously, et cetera, have a much, much more profound impact. So this was kind of the genesis of what sparked my interest in really understanding how food can change people's lives, and how food can actually be the best form of medicine if delivered, properly and sustainably, and not just for people's bodies, but for the planet's health as well. And I'm sure we'll talk about that.
And for those that don't know, what's the one-liner on Aspire Food Group today?
Yeah, so we pioneer the most advanced technologies to produce insects as a protein source and to generate ingredients from insects, including crickets, to provide high-quality bioavailable protein source that can be used to fortify various foods around the world. We have operations in Austin, Texas, now in London, Ontario, and we have some really exciting plans for continued growth and expansion.
Cool. We're going to hear all about that. And I'm proud to say that your company is the largest in industry as well, in crickets. And we'll learn more about that. I want to go over to you, Kat. Cinnabon is a brand that every single person in the world knows. You were instrumental. You started there and kind of moved your way up into focus brands, leading multiple brands within that organization. Give us a quick intro about yourself, and we'll talk more. You'll be our scale expert for today.
Awesome. So I run a company called Focus Brands, the president and COO. We're a global food franchisor. So it's sort of the intersection of where Main Street meets Wall Street. It's big brands, but small independent operators in 60 countries around the world, 7,000 locations, billions of dollars in sales, and three really interesting elements to that business. One is the amount of entry-level jobs that it creates around the world. 1 out of 2 workers in most developed countries work in hospitality or food in some way, and many of them in franchise locations owned and operated by local business people. The second is we acquire brands that might otherwise kind of start sliding down the hill and help give them new life and the benefits of scale, bringing technology that's needed to compete today, bringing culinary innovation that's required to move brands down to relevance spectrum so that what was cool and relevant a decade ago can be cool and relevant in a brand aligned way, but right for the consumer, doing what's right for the community, for wellness in the case of many brands, protecting quality ingredients and getting it to people in a highly relevant way. And then the third is connecting it to meaning around the world, whether that's Jamba Juice and moving towards something better for planet and body, or even in the case of Cinnabon, it's an indulgent brand, but just bringing treats around the world and using that to show up and bring delight to people. So happy to be connected today and look forward to chiming in from the sidelines on the scale side of things.
No, really, it's great to see you, by the way. My favorite reason for doing these events is I get to connect with old friends. And I feel like, we haven't seen each other in ages. I'm excited personally to get more information on what you've been doing. And I saw also, we'll preview it at the end, what you might be up to next. So Nate, over to you, my local DC buddy. You guys, are doing unbelievable work in impact. You personally are disrupting this idea of impact in food. And a lot of people talk about it, like I talk about impact, and Mohammed Ashour talks about impact. Kat talks about wellness and, the change. But you're actually you feed hungry people in real time where it's needed most. And you guys were nominated for a Nobel Prize for your work. We saw World Food Program win a Nobel Prize for feeding the world. And I just want you to just take on, and thank you for being with us. Take a minute to introduce us to yourself and your ginormous team, by the way. I was looking at World Central Kitchen. I thought there was 3 of you a couple of years ago. You now have 50 or 100 employees. So welcome.
Yeah, we've had to scale a little bit too, in response to some of how the world is at the moment. But yeah, so I'm Nate, the CEO of World Central Kitchen. We are a nonprofit founded by a chef named Jose Andres. Jose began sort of this journey around looking at food and impact in 2010 after the big earthquake in Haiti. Jose went down as a chef. I mean, as a chef, he had, chef with some restaurants, and went down to kind of see how he could potentially play a role, how he as a chef that feeds the few could become a chef that feeds the many. And in the process really started to learn. It wasn't I'm going down here to immediately, feed people and do work. It was, I need to understand, I need to learn. And a lot of that early journey was looking at how we can change food from a problem, a challenge to solve, to a solution. The answer to so much can be in the world of food. But at the same time, it's also so interconnected to so many of the issues that we face, be it hunger, education, health, as Kat mentioned, on so many different fronts. And so how can we use food to uplift and think of food not as sort of a commodity to sort of hand out, but something to empower the communities that, face food insecurity or other types of crisis. So our trajectory shifted quite a bit in 2017 after a big Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. Jose and I went down to Puerto Rico. As you said, Ahmed, World Central Kitchen was about 3 employees at that time. Yeah. And what we saw was sort of a humanitarian crisis unfolding in our own backyards in the United States. And for many reasons, the food system had broken down after the hurricane. And so we did, what chefs and people in the business do, and just get to work. And we brought together food trucks and restaurants and local suppliers, and sort of brought the knowledge of the private sector along with sort of the nonprofit public sector, and put those things together to start feeding the people. And since that time, we've been cooking every single day somewhere in the world since September of 2017. We've served over 50 million meals in the past 3 years or so. And of course, during this pandemic, this global pandemic, we've had to truly ramp up our operations to respond both across the United States, but in places around the world as well.
Unbelievable. And I think, what you guys are doing and your ability to bring down the cost of those meals is something I'm going to be talking to you about, because you're running very much like a business enterprise. And I think that's very important for all of our viewers out there who are building. A lot of people ask me, say, well, I want to build a social enterprise. Do I have to be a for-profit or nonprofit? And I tell them, well, it doesn't matter. It's the way by which you are able to generate revenue and deploy that revenue. But we'll get back to that. I think where I wanted the conversation now is, again, back to starting. Starting is one of the hardest things for anybody that sees a problem and has, an idea fragment, right? So all 3 of you have done phenomenal things, and I'd like us to have for the next 10 minutes or so a fluid conversation around how you started from idea to one. I don't want to talk about anything else, right? So whatever perspective, whatever business you want to talk about, and I'll go first. For me, at Hult Prize, when we built Hult Prize, I never imagined us being in 121 countries. I was solving a small local problem that I faced myself, even in Falafel Inc. In DC. I think have you ever been to Falafel Inc?
Not yet.
Okay, yeah, you're missing. For me, I never thought to build a 100-unit food enterprise. I just wanted to build a business that fed refugees and sold cheap, delicious falafel, and it was simple. But Mohammed, why don't you go first, and then we'll have a quick discussion. Like, how do you? We've got literally this video will go to hundreds of thousands of Hult Prize wannabe entrepreneurs. And all they're thinking about doing is starting. So how did you start? How did you tell us how you went from idea to one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fascinating. A lot of entrepreneurs begin with a very, with a nagging problem that just frustrates them to the point of realizing that, enough complaining and let me kind of roll up my sleeves and do something about it. What was so unique about our start was that's not exactly how it began. It began a lot more intellectually, a lot more of a challenge to take ourselves out of our comfort zone and think about a global problem that many of us understand in kind of an abstract way, right? Hunger, we all can appreciate those images of children, who have kwashiorkor, bloated bellies, skinny, limbs and appendages. We all grew up with an appreciation for the fact that that's awful, it's horrifying, it's not great, but we also understand that there are surely lots of very noble and benevolent organizations out there that are doing wonderful work to try to, make a dent in this issue. I think what really was inspirational for us, and for me certainly, was when I finally kind of connected the dots between our current global food production system and our long-term prospects of feeding the world, which is expected to grow both in appetite and in population. And this is kind of the collision course that to me really sounded the alarm. When you kind of look and you see a light down the tunnel, the challenge is whether that's actually a light or if it's an oncoming train. And I think for me, the worry was we're living in this paradoxical world where on the one hand, we are growing in population and appetite, but we're actually shrinking in resources with which to produce food at scale. And most of our global food production systems, especially as it relates to protein production systems, rely on methodologies that ultimately come down to the animals. So if you think of like livestock production and raising cows and chickens, etc., we have become so unbelievably efficient in the supply chains around those animals and the logistics, even how we feed them and deliver feed to them. But in the end of the day, the animal is the bioreactor. They're the final, piece of technology and the most ancient piece of technology that you really can't just disrupt too easily, right? In the end of the day, it's simple math. You put in feed and you get protein out. And with a cow, for example, that feed conversion efficiency is 8 kilograms of feed only generate about 1 kilogram of protein.
So and you created a solution from that, because you got to crickets. You were first. And I really do give you credit.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened
on crickets. Like, how did you come up with that idea?
Yeah. So for us, that was it. We just kind of looked and we realized that our current, protein production system is dependent on biological organisms that are inherently not very efficient at converting what they eat into protein. And so we asked ourselves, is there a protein source out there that is naturally occurring, that people around the world and cultures around the world already consume and celebrate, that is efficient, and not just efficient in that it's gentle on the planet because it uses less land, less water, less energy, but it's efficient in that it's a lean source of protein that can also be healthy for our bodies. And that's when we came across this extraordinary insights, which happened to coincide with a major publication by the UN FAO, that insects really hold the key to potentially feeding the world in the future as a big part of that solution. And what we realized was, while this is an exciting potential solution, the problem is no one has really figured out a way to produce this protein source at scale and in a sustainable and safe way. I mean, we're talking about bugs, right? So if you're going to convince people to eat insects, you better do this in a really hygienic, almost like pharmaceutical way, because that's how much you have to overcompensate for the stigma that shrouds this protein source. And for us, we realized that we live in a moment in history where we have access to IoT, precision farming, vertical climate-controlled indoor agriculture, and we can leverage a lot of these technologies and introduce them to insect agriculture in a way to develop the most modular and scalable protein production system in the world. And right now, we're actually building a facility in London, Ontario, that will be the densest protein production system on the planet, full stop. In terms of square footage, in terms of animal welfare, in terms of the amount of production per square foot per unit of time. And so I think for us, that was really the key aha moment, the realization that this is a long-term problem and we need a long-term solution that's going to take some time to cultivate. And that's why I think this is such a fascinating panel, because you can contrast that with Nate, for example, who, that's great, Mohammed, and please keep working on these long-term solutions, but like, there's people hungry today. So like, I need to step in and we need to feed those people today. And that's exactly how this problem is going to be solved.
Yeah, good transition. Over to you, Nate, on the idea, because we get this a lot. Like, how do you go from like, I think I called you when the Lebanon bombing happened, and to make sure, and you're like, no, I'm already in Lebanon. I'm already here, and you were probably one of the first aid organizations there. How do you guys in your organization go, or you personally, from like, hey, here's a good idea to making it happen?
Yeah, I think as Mohammed said, I think it starts in the root that when people are hungry, they're hungry now. They're not hungry, next week, next month, next year. So, the urgency has to be there. And I think, what we've been able to do is show and develop a model that enables us to move very quickly, because we're not reinventing the wheel every time. We're not sort of parachuting in from the outside with a bunch of, supplies, and not to say there isn't a model for that, right? I mean, I think the work that the World Food Program does around the world is very important, especially in places amidst conflict and extreme famine, and where they just have to bring in, food to get to the people. But I think there's another level where you can respond to crisis, you can respond to emergency, to food insecurity by leveraging what's already there within a community and working alongside and with the community. And so it enables us to, not only is it sort of easier in a way, because you don't have to, have a bunch of planes and helicopters full of stuff. And there's times for that, but it's also smart, because it's more efficient, it's faster. And so let's talk about Beirut as a great example of this. So we saw the bomb, the explosion, of course, unfold as with everybody else did. And we knew that as the extent of the damage was coming out, we had to get on the ground. And this is sort of the first step of World Central Kitchen's work. Is we're big believers of boots on the ground, in the sense that you don't really know what's happening if you're sitting behind a computer screen somewhere, or reading the news or reading Twitter, right? You need to. So what did you do? There.
I'm getting goosebumps. Like, you saw the bombing. Take us through. I think everybody here. Take us through what you did. Like, you got in a room and said, hey, guys, we need to get on airplanes to Lebanon, or what? Like, take us through.
Yeah. So we have a team that's kind of like our emergency strike team. And so this team, within a couple of hours, after the explosion, we said, okay, it's clear we don't know exactly what's needed yet. Everything is still chaotic, but we know we need to move quick. So our team got on the plane, as one of the first flights available, jumped on the plane, flew out to Beirut. But while they were in the air, our team here back in the States was putting all the pieces together, right? And what's so amazing about this industry and the food industry in general, and whether that's chefs and restaurants and suppliers, is it's an incredibly tight-knit community. And so, we can pretty much go anywhere in the world and have somebody on the ground that we can get in touch with, that we can know. There's, first of all, Lebanon and its food scene is incredible. So of course we were, making connections with local chefs there and restaurants. And so by the time our first folks hit the ground in Beirut, we had already built those connections. They already had a place to go. We already had places. We almost had a team that was forming, during the flight over in those first hours. So immediately we connected again with locals. We as an outside organization, and this is true everywhere that we work, we don't know what we don't know. And so it's so critical for us to really pull in and connect with the community that's already there. So most of the teams where we work are local teams that we bring in, and then we sort of apply our expertise and experience on top of that. So we were able to get a Lebanese team together, young Lebanese. You might have seen on the news, incredible people turned out to help clean up. But very quickly, we were able to establish, okay, in the area of destruction, where are the needs? Where are the folks that need food? The hospitals that were treating people that had no access to food. And these were folks who went through the explosion. And so we got we were able to get restaurants up and running. Lebanon, like everyone else, was facing COVID as well. So the restaurant industry was hurting. So it was a great way to reactivate those restaurants, put them to work. So we were paying the restaurants to produce meals. We then were able to rent out a kitchen, a restaurant that had sort of been dormant because of COVID. We got it back up and running. We paid their staff. So their kitchen staff came in. So before we knew it, we were producing thousands and thousands of meals every day.
It's almost unbelievable. And last comment, I'm going to go to Kat, that you're an outside organization, but you're better at mobilizing domestic resources than anyone else in the country. So, I mean, is that a business?
Yeah,
is that just what you're good at doing? So you're not scared to jump on an airplane to.
Exactly. I think that's what it is. It's we can break through the bureaucracy. We just have to start moving. Sometimes I look at us a little bit like air traffic controllers, where all of the pieces might be there, but you need somebody to kind of bring those things together and direct them. I mean, of course, we have our chefs too, and we set up kitchens when we need it and we cook, but a lot of times it's really about the logistics, the coordination more than anything else. The cooking, actually, Jose says this, the cooking's the easy part, right? It's getting the food in, getting the food to where it needs to go. That's the hard part. And so that's really what we focus on.
So cool. And we have people on the call today on this show from Lebanon, from Jordan, from Palestine, from the Middle East region where you guys have been, as well as the Latin American region as well. So we'll be excited to get those questions as well. Inspiring, to say the least. And Kat, over to you, because I think you've also got stuff outside of Focus. Feel free to talk about your refugee stuff or your Focus stuff or whatever else you want. The idea here is a little words of wisdom on how to take an idea and make it come to life. But please also give us one example of how you do that in a big bureaucracy like Focus Brand versus, Mohammed Ashour calls the shots, whatever he wants to do, he does, with no strings attached.
Yeah, I'll share maybe two different ways for anyone who sees this, that the concept of idea arrives. One is reaction to an opportunity or a need, right? There's some stimulus, and then you think, I can go there, I can do this. So that's a reactive form of an idea and closing the gap of an opportunity or a need. And then there is in the white space, creative, sit, think, have a concept, and need to build from zero. And there are similarities to taking something from idea to step one, but there are uniquenesses. And as it relates to meeting a need, I think what Nate just described is really the answer, which is simply action. It is like, if you don't feel like working out for the day, how do you convince yourself? Put your shoes on. Like that, you're not going to keep sitting on the couch while your shoes are on, right? We don't think our way into action. We act our way into different thinking. So just do it. Don't wait. Don't get analysis paralysis. Start. And that is also true for meeting a need in a large corporation, because the minute I have learned that an individual spends too much time selling the concept, looking for alignment, finding funding, time is passing them by when having a scrappy prototype or a small group of the coalition of the willing, of people who believe, who will show evidence of something, then you have a much better story to tell. So action and just getting started on the reacting to a need. On the proactive side, it connects a lot to what Mohammed said and also what Nate said, which is thinking through, why go it alone? Who are the enablers that I could call, that I could reach out to, that will also be the coalition of the willing? And so maybe while I'm doing step one, they're doing step two. And I remember going to Zata Ari in Jordan during the peak of the Syrian refugee crisis, and with the UN Global Entrepreneurs Council, and seeing the amount of entrepreneurial activity, the amount of small businesses inside of the refugee camp. And as we talked with amazing humans that are there, families, mothers, sons, sisters, who were doing things that created income, but also met needs. And we asked, how did you get started? It was one. Everything starts with one step, one cookie, one cinnamon roll, one business. As you heard from Nate, 3 people going to Puerto Rico, right? There's a need, we're going. And then if there is energy around it and enough passion, and then yes, helpful resources, it can explode over time. But every concept we own at Focus, all the national chains, every brand people love, they all started as one. They all started as some idea in somebody's kitchen, and they made some sandwiches. They gave them away at first, and then they started selling them. And then someone said, you should get a place for this. So whether it's work in refugee camps or humanitarian work around the world or inside of a corporation, knowing that there are different types of idea to step one situations of reactive versus proactive, and either way biasing them with action and not going it alone, I think are the ways to accelerate getting started.
Really, really solid. I think to summarize the 3 panelists, it's like, create a solution that solves a problem, right? 2, just go. Don't be obsessed with the getting it perfect or getting to 100 from day one. Just starting. And 3rd, which we'll talk about in the next segment, is recruiting other people who are as passionate about your solution as you are. Because in all 3 of your stories, I think it all revolves around getting more, whether Kat, it's you, recruiting other people to buy in. Mohammed, Ashour, you're still a startup. You're recruiting people on the team that could be paid more or have better opportunity, in the conventional sense elsewhere. And then Nate, you're just kind of putting together everybody in a system and asking them to trust you to accomplish your mission. So, stay in order. Mohammed, Ashour, how do you build a tribe? How do you recruit people to believe in what you believe in as the right solution to the problem?
Yeah, I think we live in a really phenomenal point in history where more than any other time, I think people who are entering the workforce have an obsession with purpose. And they don't just expect it, they demand it. And if companies are no longer aligning themselves in their vision with a broader, impactful purpose, people get impatient and anxious and can't justify devoting their lives and their time to those kinds of causes. So I think for me, it's just authentically conveying the profound magnitude of what it is we're hoping to accomplish, and frankly, just inspiring people about the cause that we're trying to pursue, which I think is the most important and noble cause in the world. And fortunately, one of the few that's quite nonpartisan. I mean, everybody eats and everybody needs to eat, right? Like that's a basic universal truth I think we can all agree on. And it's hard to politicize. And despite that, it's amazing how, bureaucracies can encumber these efforts. You see like food aid being blocked into countries that are in need, or, governments that can't even, negotiate basic spending bills just to feed people who are hungry. And that's why when you ask, someone like Nate, like, how were you able to do this? It's like, look, we're not encumbered by all the bureaucracies. We just went and, got food to people. Like, that's what we're supposed to do. So I think that for us, a big part of it is really very authentically conveying a vision that is much bigger than any one person, and that includes myself. I'm just part of the machine. I'm part of the process, and eventually, there will come a time where I'm no longer going to be needed, or worse, maybe I'm now an obstacle to the very vision that I helped establish, and I need to kind of take a step back. So I think that's a huge part of it. And when you have that, but not just the words, the actions that correspond with it, and your actions align with the values you espouse. You talk about integrity, but you act with integrity. You talk about not selling out, and you don't actually sell out. When people see that over time, it's hard to let go. I mean, over the last 5 years, we've hired over 200 people, and we've had 2 cases of voluntary attrition. People who actually left to go to one of them was an electrical engineer whose whole life dream was to go and work for Tesla, and finally got the job. And we were so proud of him. And we
got the job.
So anyway, I'll turn it over to maybe Kat or Nate to talk about their approach.
Yeah. It's 200 years. Amazing. Kat, we'll go to you and we'll wrap up with Nate, and then I'm going to let you guys fire some questions to each other, and then we're going to go to the crowd.
Yeah, I think outside of what people might easily be able to Google in terms of recruiting top talent and connections and networks and things like that, I'll just add that there's so much that comes from simply your reputation. And whether that is the good work you do and being really good at telling your own story and helping others feel empowered to tell your story, shine your light bright, right? That I believe that talent and tribe is so much more powerful when it is when people are coming to you, when you spend your energy just creating a gravitational pull because your work is so clear, and then those who are called to it are so clearly connected, then you have lower turnover, you have higher engagement, you have higher success rates. They also then know how to find other people that are connected to the work and the mission. So shining your light bright and connected to something Mohammed said, be a good partner in good times and an even better partner in bad times. And there are few better ways to create retention, keeping the wonderful humans that you have in your orbit around you, and few better ways to have your story of your company, your leadership, your culture live on beyond the entity and beyond the moment, that make people say, I not only love the what we do, but far more important, how. That makes people feel good in their soul and incredibly proud. And so that would be my contribution to the team or the tribe discussion.
Well, I'm going to take you a step further. Like when you took over Cinnabon and you had to scale, you had to recruit not necessarily talent that directly reported to you, but talent for the organization as franchisee operators.
Yeah.
Do you take the same approach, or how do you sell them? Would you different?
Yeah, I'll share it from the other side, which is when we've bought a company or gone through an era where things weren't very good. It is super hard and very expensive to recruit because you're solving for a gap. You have to basically build a bridge over a chasm that exists that shouldn't, for people to feel comfortable walking over it and taking the risk, as opposed to just building a solid foundation. I remember when we bought Jamba Juice, took it private and needed to recruit a new leadership team, help the franchisees believe we would be good stewards of the brand and great owners. And it had a decent pass, but not great. It took just a lot of actions. There's no way to shortcut reputation. And so finding ways to point out the good that has been done, and then making sure everyone on the team, not just me, the leader, everyone who touches the key stakeholders, whether it's customer service, support people, or franchise boots on the ground helpers and trainers, anyone who's interfacing needs to leave people feeling good about their interactions. And that builds trust and reputation around an organization far faster than sending someone a memo with our commitment to our mission and our values, but rather living it on a regular basis.
A lot of people do that. Mm-hmm. They send those memos and, they sign out.
Yeah. And then they don't call people back for 4 days in their own organization, right? It's just, that the actions, the phrase, your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying, is incredibly true of team.
Amazing. And then Nate, and then I'm going to, just to all of our audience members out there, just so you know, today's panel is made up of what I think are titans in food. So any questions, get them ready, because those answers could change your life. So get those ready. We're very close to moving into the Q&A portion. And I want to turn it back over to you, Nate, on tribe and selling, and what are some tips and secrets, because it's no stretch of the imagination. Everybody here has been successful by their ability to recruit others that are as passionate about their mission. So what's been your secret sauce?
Yeah, it's a great question. There was something about 9 years ago, I was in Haiti with Jose, and as World Central Kitchen was just getting going, and I wasn't part of the organization then, I was just a friend, but he was talking about his restaurant business. And what he said at the time was, the only reason I'm successful with my work is because of the team that I have around me. We, especially for chefs, we like to think, that big chefs, whether they're, somebody like Thomas Keller or, Tom Colicchio or whoever, are in their kitchens of the restaurants when we go to them, right? But we know that's not really the case. It's a little bit of sort of the magic of it, right? So, if you're a chef like that and you have a lot of restaurants, you rely on your team to deliver on your vision, the excellence that's required for you to be successful. You can't be in all of your kitchens at all of your restaurants, and you can't be cooking every single dish. So it's so critical to have everybody around you, be very, very strong and supportive. And so similarly, as with World Central Kitchen's work, we are a fairly small, tight-knit organization for the scale and the reach that we have around the world. And really, that's only possible because of our teams. And so we've learned a couple of things along the way that I think have become very, very critical and central to the business. One of them is communication is key, not marketing and promotion, but exactly as Kat said, be honest and transparent about the work. Do the work. Don't sell the work. Don't sell the idea of the work, but do it. You can't trick people into thinking an amazing, a terrible product is amazing, right? At the end of the day, the product has to be good and speak for itself. And so for us as a nonprofit, that sort of falls into two areas. One of them is we want to be very transparent to all of our donors. So if you give us $5 or $5,000, we want you to know exactly where your money is going for our work. So you can log into our social media, you can go to our website. Every single day, you're going to see what we're doing and what we're up to. So like today, this morning, I woke up and our team is down. We've got a team that's down in Miami, Florida, for example. And, there were well over 1,000 people that had waited overnight in line right now for 12 hours overnight to get a gift card to go to a grocery store. That's the hunger crisis that we're facing in America right this second. We need to tell people what's going on and what we're doing. So we're sharing that message. And in the process, exactly as Kat said, I think you create a bit of a gravitational pull to the work because people see what you're doing and say, wow, I want to get involved in this. And you end up sort of naturally pulling in folks who are really dedicated to the mission and the vision rather than sort of trying to go out and find people who might be a good fit, if that makes sense. I think, the other sort of key thing that we look at is recognize that, what we found has worked really well for us is sort of this idea of a flat organization. Now, not flat in the sense you still have to have leadership, right? You still have to have ownership because otherwise things just don't get done. And whether you're in a kitchen, you have to have somebody who is ultimately responsible to getting that food out the door, right? But at the same time, you can still empower the teams to know that when you're on the ground, everybody is doing everything. We'll be out in the field somewhere and myself or Jose, we'll be taking out the trash, right? There's no job too small to jump in when needed. And there's nobody that should not be presenting an idea or sharing something or jumping into a need. If there's something there, you just got to start doing it. You've got to take action. And so I think that's a real key piece too, is you empower those around you to know that their opinions matter, that they can feel like they can really have that agency in the work, that they're not just there to be told what to do, but really they're leading that work. And so I think that's been really critical, especially as we've got operations going on all over the world. We have a team right now down in Colombia, in an island that's off the coast of Nicaragua that was hit directly by Category 5 Hurricane Iota, completely devastated. If I'm here in DC, I'm not sitting here sort of quarterbacking what's going on. I talk to my teams constantly. We're checking in about stuff, but they have to be empowered to know that they're on the ground. They've got to be making decisions in real time. And I think that's so critical in building that sort of sense of ownership about the work, which ultimately I think leads to better work in the end anyway. So it's really a win-win.
Great tips. I mean, if we just follow these tips that you guys have all heard out there today, you're one step closer certainly to $1 million startup award through Hult Prize. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left. I do want to make sure we have a lot of questions coming in from all over the world. final thoughts, and then we'll take it to questions. You can either ask each other questions or give me your response on the industry trends. Like, this panel's the future of food. I know we didn't talk a lot. I was more interested in your journeys, but is meat gone in a decade? Is food and water more valuable than Bitcoin? Where is the industry? What are your closing thoughts on the future of food? I was super impressed. I just saw one of our winners of our UC Berkeley on-campus Hult Prize program has developed a plant-based tuna, which is now going to sushi restaurants and looks like, acts like, tastes like fresh tuna. So,
Wow.
Give us your take, Nate. We'll start with you, and we'll go to Kat, and Mohammed, you wrap us up on the industry itself. Like, what are the trends?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of interesting technology coming out for sure. We're seeing folks testing new things and new developments, and now X Prize just announced a big X Prize for the future of fish proteins and chicken proteins made from non-meat sources. So I think that's going to be super interesting. But for me, what's actually most exciting about the industry trend is a broader recognition of the importance of food on our planet, and both the impact that food production has on our planet with issues like climate change, and also just how central access to food and healthy food is so critical to human beings. And I think it's starting to be at the center of the conversation a lot more. And I'll say, even looking here in the United States, where I am right now in Washington, D.C., after this pandemic, the conversation shifted. I think the importance of food and understanding how we are not prioritizing food in the conversation has created so many challenges. On one hand, we have farmers dumping their crops, and on the other hand, we have people standing in line for hours for food. It just doesn't make sense. And so I think we're going to start to see a bit of a more coherent national food strategy, food policy, perhaps leadership at the highest levels, finally putting food and health and wellness at the forefront of where we're headed, both as a country and hopefully as a planet. So that to me is really important. It's just this growing recognition of the importance of food, the food industry, the role that chefs can play, the role that restaurants can play. The idea of a TV chef now, from the 90s, a celebrity chef and going on, isn't as interesting as the chefs that are now, having social impact around the world, right? And Ahmad, more businesses like Falafel Inc. cropping up all over the place. And so I think, again, the importance of food is really what's exciting me about where the future is going.
It gives me goosebumps. Kat, you have announced on your social media, after your tenure as leading one of the most well-known brands in the world, are moving on. So what trends are you seeing that maybe you're, beginning to explore out there?
So many. I would love for actually all of us to do a session just on this and go deep and have it continue to inspire others who can take action on it. I think that the biggest trends are in three buckets. One is sourcing and supply, whether that's alternative proteins, plant-based, transparency, more consciousness and integrity around the supply around the world. And as Nate said, just more awareness about the dysfunctionality of the supply chain. And therefore then under that bright shining light, once we are aware and acknowledge, solutions are being brought to bear. So there's a whole set in supply and sourcing. And I won't double click on protein and plant because Mohammed is the dude to do that. The second is production models. Ways food is being made, assembled, different labor requirements, different manufacturing techniques, like things that actually process the food or assemble it in order to make it ready to eat. And there's so much cool innovation happening around packaging that's better for the planet and can protect food for longer so it can get to the place that it needs to get. urban farming and urban production facilities that are solving problems with food deserts. And then I'd say the third bucket, and where I'll give a few examples, is distribution. What's actually getting food to people? And where I'm spending a lot of my time leaving kind of the big chain brand franchise world as I'm bridging into technology companies that enable small business owners, in particular small restaurateurs around the world. More and more people in both developed and developing countries use this to get their food, to text and order, to do things that enable small business and actually help them not have to put up a bunch of cash to start a business, whether that's technology that's enabling home cooks to sell their food around the world, which is a super exciting and huge idea, potentially, if we can get around the regulatory side of it. Technology that is creating a less expensive marketplace for small businesses that allows them to pay lower fees, not have to pay upfront costs for technology, but gives them access to customers and transactions and helps them learn more about their customers. Everything that's enabling delivery, whether it's concepts like reef kitchens or cloud kitchens or collabs happening in industrial space, the ability to not have to put up a lot of capital, be with chefs, cooks, and operators that you meet and collaborate to produce food, and then have that enabled by delivery technologies, whether it's a bike, a cart, a kiosk, a green-powered food truck like Zev out of New York, or all these other technologies. The innovations and the trends around helping customers access food and then helping entrepreneurs, the smallest of them, get that food to customers and manage that predictable revenue in a way that helps them also minimize food waste and grow their business. That I'm really excited about technology that enables small business owners, and those who can do it well. Small business typically has been very inefficient. It's hard to sell, there's high churn. That's changing because there's a way to make it accessible to so many. And in aggregate, small business owners in this industry are a behemoth. And a few tech companies are really starting to crack that code. So I'll be spending a lot more time with them.
It's amazing. It's like anywhere, anytime, any place. It's just opening up the floodgates to opportunity. And hopefully we can start putting some of those bigger companies not out of business, but giving them a run for their money. So
even the playing field, there's enough opportunity and enough need for everyone.
And I saw Mohammed's eyes open when he realized that you are exploring new opportunities. So I'm sure he's going to call you right after this. I know you, bro. I can see you. I'll turn it over to you for.
Well, you know what? Just in the interest of time, honestly, I think both Nate and Kat added so much there that I just second and triple everything they just said, and I'm happy to just dive right into the Q&A.
All right, let's
plus one for bugs.
Yeah, you guys are all so humble. I just I feel so lucky and privileged to have you all on the call today, or the Zoom meeting, or whatever, the digital speaker series event, and hopefully our community around the world has really benefited and been inspired. We're excited to see what the future of food holds. And again, Hult Prize is happening. We've got literally, we'll see hundreds of thousands of new ideas that are aligned with everything all of you have talked about coming through this year. We've got digital impact summits happening March, April, May, and then we've got the largest food accelerator program, which will take place at our castle June and July this year. So welcome all of you back to that as well. So let's just jump right in. Here's a question from Omar in Jordan: is how do we compete with the corporations who are just in it for the money, and making the money is not aligned with the impact? I can put substitutes in my products, sugar in my products, etc. So can we compete, or is this all for nothing? Are we just kind of singing this song and doing this dance, when at the end of the day, billion-dollar corporations like Unilever, Nestle, they're just too big?
I'd love to answer that from the big corporation side of things.
Yes.
Or as someone who lives in all worlds, in both worlds, invest in the small upstarts, yet have worked in the larger brands. And based on that question, I would say have faith in the consumer. Customers want quality and local, and that can be achieved at all different price points and in all different ways. And if you believe that customers are on a journey to wanting better for themselves and better for their families, the only thing that the big players have today that someone small doesn't, really, when you think about it, is more access, right? There are more of them. There are just X number of McDonald's for every one falafel amazing business that gets started, but it all starts as one. And just that doing what you do well, doing it right, and using the free tools available to you, the digital tools that allow you to tell your story, get access to your business. You will be surprised at how quickly you start attracting your own fans and actually becoming someone the big chains worry about. They may not know you as an individual, but they are very aware of the growing movement of quality and authenticity that comes from independent startups. So the wind is at your back.
Really encouraging, because a lot of folks sometimes it's too big. How do I ever tackle it? So I think that's great advice. Here's one on the restaurant industry in terms of like retail. What's the future of retail restaurants in a post-COVID world? We know that in the U.S. alone, 120,000 restaurants have shut down. What's the landscape look like? Nate, maybe you guys, I don't know. I know you're very involved in Chef Jose Andres' universe as well on the retail side, and he's closed a couple restaurants. So
yeah, we've been working with thousands of restaurants during this pandemic, and it's actually been a big shift to our model because we realized early on that as a nonprofit, we weren't going to be able to set up kitchens all over the country to feed people, right? It's just there's too much. This problem is too big. But what we realized very early on was there were a lot of there's restaurants everywhere, and restaurants needed support and needed business. And so immediately in March of this year, we shifted our model quite a bit to, instead of World Central Kitchen going and setting up an operation somewhere, we were able to put those restaurants back to work to cook for their communities and then get that food out to those that needed it most. And it was a smart, approach that just made sense to us. We had this crazy idea in the early days that we were going to serve 1 million meals from restaurants out to folks. We were paying the restaurants $10 a meal because we wanted that cost to be able to cover, their staff, their lights. We didn't want to, their ingredients. We wanted to be able to do it properly. And so we had this crazy idea. We were going to raise $10 million. Well, so far we've put $135 million back into the hands of small local restaurants to cook for their communities across the country. And one of the things that we've been seeing firsthand is the impact of this COVID crisis. And we saw it in Lebanon. We've seen it in Central America. We've seen it in Spain and Europe, where we've been working as well. And, it is going to change things. I think we've seen a huge number of restaurants go out of business permanently in the United States. And many right now are holding on by a thread, and it's going to be a very challenging number of months, especially as winter comes in this part of the world. So, it's requiring a lot of pivots. It's requiring, I think, restaurateurs that have been doing the best. The retail restaurateurs are similar to what Kat has said, which is they've tapped into new technologies. They've looked into new solutions. They've been using new tools. Here in DC, we've had a group of restaurateurs come together and set up their own delivery service because the other big guys were taking too many fees. 30%. And so that type of,
what the hell? Like, what's our margin? Not even 30%.
Exactly. And so I think there's good to come out of it. The other one, last thing I'll mention is, I think there's been a recognition of the importance of restaurants in communities as well, and restaurants in the potential to feed their communities. And so my hope is that when we come out of this, we don't just go back to fully business as usual, but we recognize the importance and value in the food producers within our communities, in our restaurants. We make sure we prioritize them, and we see the role that they can play during times of crisis, during hunger, during these issues. Tap into the expertise that the restaurants have, not just, other sources from the outside, but those that are right there in the community. And so that's something that I think will stay with us even after we get through all of this.
Amazing. Are you guys okay if I go over my 10 minutes, or do you have 11 a.m. sharp stops? Kat, are you good? Mohammed, are you
2
good?
minutes. I'm good for 2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right.
2 or 3.
Okay. Mohammed, I'm going to go to you. I've got a fundraising question, but
Ahmed, if you don't mind, given that I can stay for 10 minutes, why don't we direct a question to Kat, because she has a couple of minutes left. And maybe Kat, you want to add to that last question as well, because that restaurant.
Kat, fundraising. How do you guys make it look easy up here? We all, Kat, you're a YGL. Nate, you're Chef Jose Andres' right-hand man. Ashour, your Hult Prize winner. I founded the Hult Prize. But what does everybody else do? How do they raise money?
I am so inspired by, not to make everything about technology, but by the technological shifts that are enabling many types of relationships of where capital can meet need. So many, whether it's crowdfunding, crowd equity, lower debt, specialty programs, grants. I mean, these platforms are a Google away from a founder finding the right type of funds for them, whether that is non-dilutive capital, grants and donations and contributions, and again, crowdfunding platforms. That can be huge for a business and all they need ever to get started. And then there are others with more capital intensive business models where they do need deeper relationships, potentially equity partners, and there are no shortage of platforms to do that. And I have been inspired, moved to tears in some cases, by seeing, oddly accelerated by COVID, how many people are fundraising from their couch, and how many micro investors, people who can't give a lot, but who can give a little and are comfortable doing so because there are tools that now make it manageable for a founder to get a lot of a little donations or investments from people to enable their business. So I would say you use the tools. If you have access to an internet connection, use those tools. And if not, apply that mindset to IRL in real life, finding small contributors to your business to help you get off the ground.
And Kat, your final words of wisdom, and we'll let you check out, and what our community can do for you. If anything, we're here, we're in 120, you probably have people on this call from 50 countries. What can we do for you as well? We want to know, so we can kind of continue this giving loop.
Yeah, I would say this little quadrant of squares is a very interesting framework through which to view opportunities in food, enabling foundations and institutions, supply side creativity and innovation, bridging need, humanitarian work, solving the human gaps, closing the human gaps with what World Central Kitchen is doing, closing that need and supply gap. And then the scale side of things, that brands aren't bad, and innovation isn't bad, and small is just as hard as big, but in different ways. And so I would hope that through this discussion, you reach out to us and connect with us or our organizations if you think you can help what we do, if you think we can help what you do. And back to our earlier discussion, just do, just give, just be, all the rest comes your way.
Good. Thank you so much, Kat, for being with us. And I think we'll probably do a follow-up at some point.
Oh.
It's been so much fun. So I'm gonna keep Nate and Mohammed on. See you, Kat. Thanks for coming on. I think this next one is good. And Mohammed Ashour, some say you're a unicorn in the making. I think that's true. So how do you raise money? What's the secret?
Yeah, so I'll try to give some actionable and or at least useful advice here. Just having actually raised a very significant 8-figure sum over the last 5 years, never using an investment bank yet. that could change. But you know, the first thing is, I think you really need to understand your business very well and understand, you know, how much capital is it going to take to get you to fully fund your vision, right? And that doesn't mean your vision is fully formed yet, because it's going to continue to grow. But your vision, as you conceive of it today, your path to profitability and growth and hitting the key impact and financial milestones you need, that's going to need capital. And what does that look like? And I think you have to understand that every money comes with strings attached. You know, non-dilutive capital sounds great because you get to keep more of your cap table, but it also can come with very restrictive covenants and very draconian terms that could punish your business if you happen to have a really tough period, right? On the flip side, with equity, you know, you can go and try to get a really, really big valuation, but the problem is, you've now set an expectation and you've raised the bar so high that if you happen to have a difficult period and you need to raise more money, it becomes harder to justify a step up from your already very high valuation. So like, you need to understand it virtually doesn't matter what fundraising strategy you take. There's going to be some string attached or some sort of potential way things could go wrong. And that's why you shouldn't just encumber or limit yourself by those prohibitions. You should just, you know, take the opportunity that comes your way that is most aligned with your values and the chemistry of your organization. The most important thing, candidly, is who the investor is. Do they truly understand the path that you want to take? And by the way, you have to be there can't be like a black book and a red book. Like, you need to tell one story, and that is the story you believe, right? You can't be telling one story that's like, all right, guys, let's whip up like V2 of the financial model that tells like this super awesome story, but like we all know, like behind closed doors, we're never going to get there. You can't have that, right? Like, you have to be authentic in what you're advertising, and that means that if you do get partners, they're on the same page, right? There's no surprises, there's no shocks. They understand what it's going to take. They're patient. And even if they run out of patience or they themselves have challenges, they're never going to come back to you and they're never going to doubt you. And I think this is a really important point, and Kat mentioned this earlier. You have to play the long game and understand that your reputation, especially as a founder, is everything. If you keep damaging your credibility by not being consistent in what you articulate and not being clear about what you want, that could really hurt you. And it's great practice if you want to eventually take your company public one day. I mean, companies that are publicly traded, what makes them successful is their predictability, and the delta between what they forecast to the market and what they deliver is usually very, very slim. So it's just good practice and good governance to try to develop that consistency. But I would say, you know, unless you have offers of funding popping out of your ears, and, you know, and look, yeah, there's some kids out there that get full ride scholarships to 30 colleges and they have the luxury of sitting back and choosing, and congratulations to those people. And that's a great problem to have. That is not the case for the vast majority of startups. The vast majority of startups don't have tons and tons of opportunities, and therefore, A, don't be conceited and think that this thing is not good enough for you. And B, focus all of your energy on the right partner. The right partner, even if they write you a smaller check and take more equity, is more likely to help you build your vision than a partner who gives you a much bigger check, takes a lot less equity, but ultimately can be a nightmare for your business going forward. And I'll just leave it there for now, but happy to elaborate on any of these points or add more as needed.
Awesome. And to you, Nate, how do you fundraise? I mean, that's a question that comes up, and then your closing remarks for the crowd. And remember, how can we help you? What's your call to action for us? We've got a very powerful network of change agents ready to take action.
Amazing. So a couple of things. I'll give a couple of examples. The first one, looking at sort of the business side of things, not the nonprofit side of things necessarily, and obviously echoing everything that Mohammed said. I think one of the things that's also very important is not to get. It's easy to get caught up in sort of the false narratives and the stories, right? It's easy to get caught up in the Mark Zuckerberg, went from a college dorm room to, millions and millions and millions of dollars of investment and scaling this thing through the roof and becoming a billionaire, right? I mean, these are the stories that get told to entrepreneurs, when for the vast majority, it's nothing like that. That is not in semblance of reality. And I think, we sometimes get caught up in this idea that we're going to meet the right investor that's suddenly just going to write a blank check and we're going to scale this company through the roof, when in reality, things are much more messy and also much more evolutionary. They take time to grow, and before that sort of hockey stick type growth happens. And if you get too distracted by the shiny things, you kind of forget the core of what you really need to do. And what I mean by that is, even investors, they like momentum, right? If people are going to invest in your business, they want to see that there's demand, there's desire for it, there are people want it, that you have a fan base. And one of the most important things that you can do is not find, one person that believes in your business and wants to write you a big check. You need to find 1,000 people that really love your idea, what you're doing. They buy into your product. You build that sort of, natural growth and momentum for what it is. Let's say you're producing, a protein flour made of crickets, you want to show that there's a market for it. You want to get that fan base. You want to get people buying it and interested in it. And you want to build this community up. And from there, then you can really start to show that you've got potential and that you can scale up. And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we see the movies, we see the stories, and we see this, and we think we can skip this step, right? We think we can skip the sort of the long trudge of like building a community and building a fan base and building what it is. Like, to be successful, you don't need, some massive, if you could start to build 1,000 people and then 5,000 people and then 10,000 people supporting your business, you're going to naturally really start to see that success take off without really having to sit back and wonder where it is. And similarly, on the nonprofit side, we see that similarly. World Central Kitchen, by focusing on the work and on the people, we've built a nonprofit that is driven and supported by the people. 70% of our funding that goes into the work comes from small donors giving online. We don't spend all of our time trying to go after big government contracts or, trying to get money from the US government or other governments or even the World Food Program, going after these, hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever. What we find is do the work, build that community up and find the support within that community. And then some of those bigger guys start to pay attention to you, right? Like then they come knocking on your door and they say, "Ooh, this looks really, how can I support your work? How can I?"
Low hanging fruit.
Yes, exactly. Just get going, and then that really, can take it off. So that's the approach we've taken, and so far it's been working. I mean, obviously you have to adapt in real time as entrepreneurs. That's key. I mean, we look at World Central Kitchen as a startup, and we're adapting every single day and learning and applying new things. But I think that is such a critical point in fundraising is start small, focus on what you can do, get the good product out there, revise it, improve it, build that fan base of people that love what you do. You got to get those 1,000 fans that just love what you do. And then from there, you can really start to take off.
Closing remarks and call to action, if any, for us to do for you.
I think, hopefully most of you will never have to see us in wherever you are in your country, in your community, in your neighborhood. But, I think, share the message. I mean, I think for us in World Central Kitchen's work, we are only as powerful as our network of supporters, of the industry, of the chefs, of the people who get the word out there of what we do and the message that we have. So, become an ambassador for our work, get involved however you can in your communities and think about food and the role that food can play. So even as you're building up your businesses and becoming very successful, recognize that there's always, this extra piece that you can do to give back, and, look forward to continuing this conversation.
Everybody, Nate Mook, WCK.com, get involved. If you can donate. Nate, thank you so much for being with us. And I think we'll do this again. This was a lot of fun. As always, thank you for your great work.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
If you can sign off. Mohammed Ashour, it's back to just me and you, my bro.
All right.
So I saved the best. They're killing me because I have another session, and I know you do too, but it's not every day we get to spend time together.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a board meeting in half an hour, and I never book anything on the day of or even the day before a board meeting. But Hult Prize is always the exception to every rule in my life.
Thank you, bro. We really appreciate it. Give this community. I mean, look, what you've done in food is remarkable. Let's not call it anything but that. I remember like yesterday when I met you, when you were, you didn't even have an idea. Let's be clear. The day of the presentation of the Hult Prize at the regional summit, you were still figuring out how and what to present. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay. So
I think if we were to compete in like this year, we would have been destroyed by the teams that exist now. I mean, I think, and this isn't just honestly giving you and the team credit. It's just a statement of fact. I think one of the biggest hallmarks of is the Hult Prize more successful than it was 7 years ago is to look at just the quality of the people, the quality of the ideas, the quality of the businesses that are coming out, and the level of readiness that the teams have. And it's just really, really amazing. I think the one thing I wanted to convey, and I'm just saying this now as a realist, right? Everybody who's on this, this stream right now, who's watching this, who's a contestant or who's thinking about participating in the Hult Prize. Obviously, not everyone's going to win. In fact, the vast majority of people aren't going to win. That's just the nature of the competition. And furthermore, a very good number of people are going to go on and probably decide, like this was really interesting, but I think I want to go work in a company for a while and just maybe go through that more traditional route of building my career. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think there is one thing that even regardless of what happens with the Hult Prize, everybody can take away. And I think it's a bit of the sort of Hult Prize DNA that I feel that it really sticks with everybody. And it's this notion of, you now care in a much more profound way, and you feel a lot more connected to the root causes of what makes us all human. So even if you go and work for a Google or Facebook after the Hult Prize, now you take that to that company, and now you hold that company accountable to doing more for the world, right? And that is your contribution, and that is meaningful. If you're just like an employee in one of the larger companies in the world, and you happen to be able to convince that company to do something better for the environment or the planet or for its community, that is millions of dollars of impact you may have just inspired just by being a good person who cares and who has the courage to go and try to affect change from within an organization. So I guess I want people to understand that you can be a hero of change, not just by being an entrepreneur, by literally being a very regular employee at a very regular company, but by caring enough, right? So if there's nothing else to take away from the Hult Prize experience, is that you've now, this has intercalated your DNA. This has to be a part of how you are and who you are in virtually every interaction and opportunity you seek. And when the day comes where you happen to have that moment where you're sitting in a plane and you got upgraded to business class, and the person sitting next to you is, the CEO of some Fortune 500 company, and you have 5 minutes of their time and attention, and you can tell them something that can inspire them to go back to their boardroom and make some changes, you've just changed the world, right? So seize the opportunity when it comes, whether that is $1 million prize or, an entry-level job at a tech company.
Unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, Mohammed Ashour, thank you so much for being with us. That'll do it for us today. Thank you for joining Digital Speaker Series event. That was our last digital speaker event of 2020. Thank you everybody for joining us. Big round of applause to Mohammed Ashour, Kat Cole, and Nate Mook, who have come together to provide everybody out there with an opportunity to be inspired, take action, and be well-resourced and connected to really be the leaders of change, not of tomorrow, but of today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Good luck, and I wish you all well in your journeys to lead a generation to change the world. Peace.